From the introduction, you can see that this is the first video in this series, Let's Talk Storytelling. And to begin with, why stories? What's the point of these storytellers and writers? Do we need them really? I think you need us. You're a storyteller yourself, this is the place for you. Or if you've always been very curious about stories and storytelling, this is also the place for you. So we'll start off with this first video, an introduction. Why stories? For those of us who did literature in school, we are taught all stories. You can use them to document people, places, things, events. Yes, but then there's also the part of imagination. Vivid imagination. I feel like that's very important because sometimes we all just need an escape from this world, and then stories can give us that, right? We have fantasy stories, we have romance, opening the doors for you, getting you flowers, somebody running after you in the way to beg you to stay in their lives, and all those crazy things, that they do, whispering sweet nothings. Some of these things are things that people will never experience in their lifetime. I'm sorry to be that brash and direct, but it's the truth. People may never experience these things in their lifetime, but then stories have given them this, escape into this other world that is so fantastic and beautiful, and I think it's a privilege to be able to create that world for people through stories. Okay, let's come to something more far-fetched, right? We have stories of vampires, werewolves. Many of us were in love with Twilight when it came out. I particularly have seen the movies over 10 times, and I will still see it if I have the opportunity to. Why? Beautiful actors, handsome guy that makes you forget that he's a vampire, that is supposed to be sucking your blood, but then the way the writer has made it, the way the characters have been created, you see a whole different person. In this vampire that could be the end of you. You see werewolf, you see Jacob, and you forget that you're supposed to be scared of him, right? Oh, he's very handsome. Oh, Jacob. And the way they both love Bella. Oh, God. They're fighting over Bella, and then they now team up to fight for Bella. And beautiful, right? And that story, and that storytelling. So next time, if as a storyteller you're wondering, what do I matter? What am I really doing? I think that this is a wake-up call to you, to believe that you matter and your stories matter. You are documenting people, places, events, and you are creating life. Tell me something closest to God than that. You are creating pictures, you're making things very beautiful, creating scenarios where they shouldn't be, and killing things, making them alive. I remember sometime I was writing and it got to a point that a character was to die. You do that a lot. You just decide, let's kill this person to make the story go a whole different way. And then I was just, brainstorming on my own, walking around my house, and I was just like, John has to die. And I just paused, I realized what I was saying, and I just had to quickly go WhatsApp and type it into my status box. I was like, oh, I really sound like a killer right now. Just imagine somebody randomly just hearing that, not knowing, okay, I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, and just hears, John has to die. But that's true. We kill people, we make them alive through our stories, and we make it believable enough. That verisimilitude to real life, that's something that you don't just get anywhere. We know artists do that with their paintings, with their sculpting, and it's beautiful that you can do that with words. Very beautiful. People can read and feel what you're feeling. They can read and see what you're seeing. They can read and you draw them into your world, and I think that is just a very beautiful thing. I remember the first time I read a book by Stephen King, I remember feeling very terrified. I couldn't sleep that night. Later on considering, I was like, these were just words. Why was I so terrified? Like, they're just words of paper. If I'm seeing a movie, I'll be like, okay, I can see the ghost behind in the camera, I can see the ghost coming into the scene, and I can see that a nun that looks very scary coming in, and okay, that should make me scared. But these were words I was just reading, and when I was equally that scared, and it felt like it was even worse than watching a movie, because it's like the fear just grows on you and stays with you. If I watch them in the afternoon, don't tell my secret, so that before nighttime I've forgotten, or at least practically forgotten the entire movie, and then whatever is left of my fear, I can just run it out. What I mean by run it out is, if I want to go and get a cup of water in the midnights, I'll come out of my room, look left, look right, and then run without my power, and then go and get the water, just run back in, and then it's over, right? I close my eyes, say my prayers, and ask God to protect me, and maybe tops in 2 days I've forgotten about the entire story. in the movie, and I've moved on with my life. I remember occasionally once in a while, but it won't be that serious and that deep. But this book stayed with me for a very long time. And these were just words in a book, for goodness sake. Why should that scare me so much and so bad? But it did. And it made me realize that that thing they taught us in school about the pen being mightier than the sword, maybe it's actually real. But not in a life and death situation, of course, because when you're faced with a sword, maybe you know the story, but then you get the point. So stories are important, and we're going to be talking about them a lot on this series. Let's talk stories. So let me know what you would like to talk about as a storyteller, as a writer. So we're going to be talking about challenges, we're going to be talking about successes, we're going to be talking about how-tos, because there's an art to writing, right? Storytellers who feel they are gifted, the stories just come to them and all that. But then there is a way you can tell a story that it will, like I talked about Stephen King's book, stay with you. You can say the same story and it doesn't stay with the person. The person just hears it. Really? So the ghost came. So the boy was pushed off the fence. Okay, interesting. And that's all. But there is a way you can write. Like Stephen King wrote that book years ago and I picked it up and it stayed with me, and I had to ruminate for days, scared to go out of my room, scared to put off the lights. There is a way to write stories and there is an art to it. So we're going to be discussing all that, and I'm going to be taking your comments. So I want you to leave comments on whatever you want us to talk about concerning stories and storytelling. There is no limit. If I think I cannot talk about them and I need higher powers, I'm going to invite people who have been longer storytellers than I have been. We're going to trash these things out. So if you've always been intrigued about stories, storytelling, writing, meeting people who are writers and just getting into their world, again, this is the place for you, and I'm so happy to be starting this series, and I trust that it goes well for all of us, because I believe I can learn from you and we can just learn together while having fun, talking about this world called storytelling. So stories are very important, and that's why I've started this series. Let's talk stories. Thank you very much. See you in my next one.